right, welcome back. What great information. Now, I told you that I was going to ask you that question about a Chapter 7. Does it make a difference?
It does. In a Chapter 7, you are liquidating and shutting everything down. So that means that if you're closing your business, that disability policy is not going to continue. Those health insurance payments are not going to continue. Those life insurance premiums are not going to continue. So if you're a business owner, as also an employee receiving the benefit of those policies, that's important to know before you file the Chapter 7 that you've made other arrangements for a policy.
So from my perspective, there are 2 points that I want to make. The first is that there is the issue of whether or not you are disabled. And certainly if you are disabled before you are filing for Chapter 7, you're not necessarily going to lose your disability coverage because you already potentially have filed a claim.
Correct.
Right. The other point I wanted to make was that many ERISA disability policies, and this is probably an ERISA policy, do have conversion rights that let you convert that group disability policy into an individual disability policy. So in that situation, all's not lost, but you have to do that before potentially you file for bankruptcy.
Very much so. And we want to make sure also that everybody's on the same page to know what that time frame is going to look like so that we leave enough time to make sure that conversion goes through without any hitches. A lot of times when a bankruptcy is filed, everybody kind of freaks out. Federal laws regarding what people do after a bankruptcy is filed are very strict. And for that reason, a lot of people want to be hands off. So we want to make sure that if you are converting that policy, if you have submitted a claim, that your bankruptcy attorney and your disability attorney are speaking and being on the same page with what the time frame is for decision and whether the filing of a bankruptcy is going to affect the filing of any claims.
So that's a good point here, because, and I would ask you to explain this to our audience, when you file a bankruptcy, who now owns, if you will, the business?
Right. So when you're filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the moment you file, that business is no longer yours and goes into the hands of a bankruptcy trustee. In our area, most of our trustees are either lawyers or CPAs. And so they then take over and start liquidating the business, closing bank accounts, selling assets, etc. So if there are any claims out there, that claim belongs to the trustee and not the business. That could be a little different, though, when we're talking about an individual. So if an individual has a claim pending, that's still going to belong to the individual, but any claim the business has is going to belong to the trustee.
So, for example, if you had business interruption insurance, business overhead insurance, and there were claims pending because of your disability, then you're saying that the trustee would then own those claims.
Correct. And then the trustee would then also administer the claims. They would approve settlements. They would approve any claim amount. They would essentially step into the shoes of the business for the purposes of receiving any monies the business is entitled to and then distributing it or liquidating it per the Chapter 7.
So let me ask you, is this different if you're doing a 7? Who owns the business then?
So in a Chapter 11, the business continues to operate. And so the business owner, for all intents and purposes, continues operating the business. So on the outside, no one knows any different. The lights are still on. The business is still operating. You don't cut employees at the filing of the bankruptcy. So for all intents and purposes, the business continues operating. You're not going to have any issues with those claims being interrupted, the policies and premiums being paid. As the Chapter 11 goes down its course and we look at what expenses to cut, how we're going to reduce debt. That's all going to fall into the overall picture of how to make this business leaner, stronger, and debt-free.
Have you ever seen a situation where the trustee recommends that disability insurance coverage or life insurance coverage be terminated?
So in some instances, yes, especially for larger companies. That's one of, and looking at the cost. So sometimes disability coverage isn't as expensive as perhaps health insurance, but could be one of the guilty by association
Right.
insurances that since we're going to cut health insurance, we're also going to cut disability and vision and dental. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they are a package deal. In smaller businesses, when maybe it's a family-run business and this is the only option they have for health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, there's a better argument to keep that around and keep it a viable expense for the business and look at other ways of reducing expenses.
Great. Let's take a quick break, and I'm going to ask some interesting questions when we come back about filing and circumstances around filing.